Welcome to the Trailer Park Podcast. This is episode 3. I am Hunter TPK, the king of the trailer park. As you know, I don't know if I've ever actually made that statement here, but I'll state it now. My guest is Luke.
Hey, I'm Luke.
I don't know what title you would like.
I'm just Luke Wilson on Smash GG, so I think that's the one.
You're going with your title in the world is going to be based on Smash
Oh,
GG.
I need some sort of like trailer park fiefdom kind of thing
I
going.
well, I guess
I
let's
need to be like the Doghouse Duke or something
yeah,
to
you
match with the Trailer
okay,
Park
that
King.
works. So
Yeah, I was
Luke,
born in the year of the dog.
the doghouse duke of the Trailer Park Kingdom. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I'm some guy.
some guy. I've known Luke a long time. We met when I beat his peach in bracket.
Okay.
I decided,
I as long as we're bringing that up, I want the record to show. Leave this on the podcast. I was once ahead of Hunter's Donkey Kong in a friendly before Bambi turned the setup off.
and that will go down in history in Pittsburgh Smash history. But we'll continue.
Yeah, it's just important detail.
Yeah, just important detail to really set the stage for our discussion that has nothing to do with Super Smash Brothers Melee. But
Yeah, no, that's just sort of how we met. Sort of. It was mostly like this guy plays melee, and then we like hung out at non-melee events more than anything. Honestly,
yeah, it
we
was.
like
We went to a big tournament together, and then we're like, "This
yeah,
is."
Big House. That was the first time I actually met you, Big House.
Yeah, we had played at a small tournament, didn't realize who the other was, and then,
Yeah,
but uh, so the discussion today, before we get too far away, is we're talking a little bit about video essays and like critical writing, which is I know a thrilling topic. Uh,
everybody loves it.
but I feel like it's not one that's like it's not heavily talked about, and it's something people kind of just gloss over. And this is coming from a video that's is criticism of me, and it is one of few comments I have gotten on YouTube, but it is something that it made me really want to talk about the subject, and I'm just going to read the comment for reference. This is from Boss Bogan on my video about Johnny Harris. He says, "Not sure what the point of this video is, question mark, dot dot. But the best way to show the world that someone is doing something wrong, as you imply, is to do it better. Lead by example and make a quality video, 15 to 20 minutes in length, on a complex subject and be sure to cite each and every source. Dazzle us with your perspective, smiley face. No editor or creator is perfect, but Johnny does an outstanding job explaining and highlighting interesting topics. If you don't like his content, then feel free to watch something else and move on, just like I'm going to do to your content." Very was not terribly rude, but definitely came off a little rude towards the end.
Yeah, it definitely sort of has like a slight like holier than thou vibe, where like the goal is to be passive aggressive while maintaining like a moral high ground,
Yeah,
which is like honestly, it's better than a lot of comments still.
it's better
But
than a
yeah,
lot of comments. They're not calling me a slur or anything. Uh, but you know, they are trying to come off very not negative and then to just mask their passive aggressive. Uh, Even though, in the end they are just saying something negative. uh,
yeah.
and not leaving really any constructive criticism of my content in any way, um, and really just dogging on the fact that I decided to critique another creator that they personally like. And it's such a weird concept because it's like you could have just taken this. You're defending someone for being critiqued, and it's like, but in doing that, you're kind of I don't know. It just seems very your point doesn't land as much by even making the point at all. Like, the comment loses weight just from making the I think.
Yeah, I mean, I that is sort of true, right? It's like you shouldn't criticize people's stuff. Is sort of the thesis, and then it's like I don't know, there's this sort of trick where it's like, you shouldn't criticize anyone unless you're making the criticism that I'm making, this like meta
Yeah.
criticism against criticism. That's valid.
Y
Anything else, that's not valid. We don't want to do that. And I do think I think this is almost like baby's first criticism thing. Like, just sort of like 101, where a lot of people they end up with the sort of notion of being like, oh, you really shouldn't criticize anything. You should just, the two directions I personally usually see it taken are people tend to be like, you shouldn't criticize something. You should do a better job, which is what this comment did. Which, to me, like I think there's an easy reductio ad absurdum here, where it's like you should never criticize a big picture movie unless you want to spend millions of dollars making your own movie. It's like
yes.
obviously that doesn't make sense. There's these movies that tons and tons of people see. They're very popular. A lot of people criticize them. A lot of people read that criticism. A lot of people watch that criticism. A lot of people find that criticism interesting, which is, I'm not saying those movies are good or bad or the criticism is good or bad. It's just like obviously that's like a part of the industry. Even, people pay to read reviews for these things, and none of those critics are in the business of making movies. Partly because they don't know how, and partly because it's just not feasible. Right? There's like these works that you and I can't go in our backyard and film Avengers 5.
Yeah, we would never in a million years have the money, resources. Like it is just a they're saying go and do it, but don't give any means of doing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even like go do something else. It's like unless you can make a movie like this, don't talk about movies. And this guy was a little more like just make your own content, which I sort of get, but like I don't know, like criticism is tons of people do it. There's tons of very popular YouTube channels that are entirely focused on criticism.
Mhm.
It's just an argument that I just don't think holds water in the real world. Like people create criticism, they enjoy criticism. It happens.
Yeah, criticism is a big part of media in general, and it's a very but when you it's I feel like it's a byproduct, like, if we're talking more of, like, the YouTube space, it's a byproduct of, um, YouTube being a little bit more of a personal space, especially when it's, like, individual creators instead of, like, groups or companies. There's more of a when you're a fan of a creator, normally there's a little bit more of a connection there in a sense. uh and
Sure.
and YouTube and like I don't think Johnny specifically pushes that sort of notion because he's a part of Vox and everything. Like he's a very
Yeah.
much an industry person. But it it's just very interesting for someone to defend a creator who's a part of like his content is also, you know, it's reporting, but Johnny has a lot of opinion based information.
Yeah, and I mean that you mentioned, he's an industry person, right? Which is like for me all the more reason to criticize him because part of the way, you even talk about in your video, you're like, I want to see sources for this, and what even is a source? Like at some point, a source is just someone who I think is reliable said this thing.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons someone's reliable is they have credentials. And the expectation is if you're part of a media company like Vox, if you're like a journalist, not someone online who makes videos randomly, like a journalist who got this job, who went to a job interview and has an HR person, um, there's this expectation that there is this journalistic integrity, this credibility associated with that. And if that's something you're not seeing, it indicates there's something wrong with not just this person's video, but the institution as a whole. Which doesn't make Johnny a bad person or anything like that. I don't think he like made these videos to trick anyone into believing the wrong thing or something. It's just that if you can make nice looking videos, but if they don't have credibility, you're taking away credibility from yourself and from your whole institution, which makes it hard for people to cite you. It makes it hard for people to rely on your information in the future.
Exactly, and it makes um when issues with your content comes up, it makes it much harder to form a defense or, you know, any sort of like, hey, like this is where I got my info. Like with his video about China and computers and keyboards and everything, like he has no real defense because he does not have any real source material to pull from, like, or to reference. Like, this professor, like, he might not be correct. Maybe Johnny did have different sources for his video, but we're not gonna know because for one thing, Johnny's never going to like talk about it because talking about controversy is almost as bad as admitting to it.
Oh yeah, I think that's another thing that's like sort of an issue in the industry, right? Where I think the world would like literally be a better place if he could say, "Hey, some people had this to say about my video. Here's where I thought their criticisms were good. Here's where I thought their criticisms were bad. Here's where I thought everything I did was great." And you could actually have a conversation with him. But in terms of like actually promoting yourself, you just can't ever like get on camera and say, hey, this criticism of me, hey, you were right, I was wrong. It doesn't look good. Or even if he said, I'm completely right, and here's why your criticism are wrong. He's just putting your criticism in the spotlight, and people are just always going to use it against him. So like, I'm sympathetic to people who ignore it. Like, it's a sucky situation.
It is a shitty situation. I do hope the sort of criticisms that have come out, like, and when I was doing research for the video, it's like my opinion, like, of about him and his sources and how he presents information at times, it's not a new opinion. Like,
Sure, yeah,
I've seen even just tweets or like little small pieces on the internet written about this, like, for not too long, but like he's he's been on YouTube for not terribly long, but I know he's
sure.
been working in some type of reporting and everything for a while. But it's just the way he's very flashy, obviously good at actually presenting information and like present like his presentation's good, his behind the scenes work needs some work. Like he needs I just and where this comment talks about like the sources and everything, if you look at even if my videos do not stand even slightly to Johnny's when it comes to pure like video editing quality, but if you look when it comes to putting out my sources, having sources in my description, mentioning where I get information from, mentioning where I get ideas from at times, like I put everything I have either in the video, in the description, or I mention it in some way. Like I have as much transparency as I can because I think that gives my point more like I have more room to stand when I'm making my points. I like it garners better discussion and it just allows like it also just makes it so not someone can just it's way easier to come in and take pot shots when there's nothing to back up your argument.
Oh yeah, when they say something bad about your video, and then you go, well, this thing that's clearly linked in the comments says you're wrong, then you're not fighting by yourself. You have this whatever institution you're deeming credible enough to source behind you, and then they can either say, well, actually, in 2017 there was this big scandal where these people turned out they weren't making very scientific studies. I'm not saying that's a thing. I'm just
Yeah,
pulling
like
shit out of my ass.
for reference. It's like
Yeah, and then you would be like, "Oh shit," but like
like
there's something substantial there, instead of just being like, "You're wrong."
yeah, you're wrong. It's just it I when it comes to essays in general, it just feels like a lot of people will create these pieces of work, they'll pour their heart and soul into them and like, make very endearing pieces of work and they will just leave out that last bit that I feel like is important where
Oh
it's
yeah,
like please just like give us a paper trail that gives us some amount of gives you like a log in a sense. Like I hate it when I get done with a video and I've worked with a reference for a while and but forgot to save it and then I have to go back and find it. In my
yeah, that
last
always sucks.
in my last video I had a source for something, could not find it and I had to just say like even though it was something like that's pretty common knowledge in a sense, I found like a good article that I wanted to cite. Couldn't find it. I was like, I had a good article for this. Like you can look it up, etc. It's like, but this is sort of common sense, common knowledge the thing.
Sure. And I mean, like I don't know. Well, you're still in school, but I don't know how much like paper writing and stuff you do. But like, it is literally true that like even if you do the research and find sources, actually like bothering to cite them, especially like in text citations and stuff, is really fucking tedious.
Hmm.
It's something everyone hates doing. No one finds it fun to put together a bibliography. Very often classes will have like a minimum number of sources specifically because if you tell a student you need 8 sources, they're not going to come to you with 12.
They're
They're
gonna
going to come
come
to you
with
with 8.
8. Yeah.
Yeah. Like it's really common to not want to do it and for it to really suck. And I think a lot of the like YouTube video essay stuff is like sort of this like wild west where it's like instead of following all these boring rules, we're just doing our own thing, which I think can be great. I think there's a lot of problems with academics. I don't think you need to like look up on JSTOR everything you ever want to learn about. I think YouTube video essays are awesome, but I think there tends to be this like we don't need to follow these rigid standards because it's sort of like edutainment, it's not the point of the video is that it's watchable, it's not just that it's informative. But I think this is kind of backwards because the fact is tons and tons of people get a lot of their information from stuff like this. If you're interested in movies, very often people will watch a YouTuber who follows movies. If you're interested in, I follow a couple YouTube channels about entomology because it's something I'm interested in.
Hmm.
And that's a much more like academic sort of scientific thing. So they tend to be like, I'm a university guy, which they're ducks are in a row. They have a PhD.
Yeah.
Um, oops. But like, I just think so many people get so much information from this kind of stuff that I don't think it's really appropriate to just go, oh, it's just for entertainment anyway, especially if you're working for just messing up the video, don't worry. Especially if you're working
It's
for like
fine.
um if you're working for like an online magazine like Vox, I think the like idea of like, oh, it's supposed to be the news, but it's really just entertainment. I like don't think that's a good thing. And it's like almost more important, even though it's boring,
Hmm.
because people are watching you, because people are entertained by you, to make sure that what you're saying is either accurate and true, or you make people aware that it is speculative or something you're trying to research.
Exact, and I think that is where it's like because a lot these sort of videos they have they might have very legitimate information in some segments, but then like you said, it's sort of speculation at some others, but they want it to be so well flowing
Yeah,
that
that's
they just have it all flow together. And it's like, well, that first part is all like verifiable, like maybe multiple institutions verifiable, etc. This other section is like you can't, like, it's not really verifiable, like, and it's not
yeah.
even really definite, like, in a sense,
But
like,
they go so well together. It's easy to write like a convincing narrative out of them.
right. And it's like I'm not even saying necessarily for video essays that are about like more laid back topics. I'm more talking about things that are, history based, like historical things about, war, like
Yeah,
anything that's like has a little more like something you don't want to skew, something you
yeah.
don't want to mistell. Also, I feel like your webcam mic is what is being used.
We were talking about I mean, we were talking about video essays and
Yeah,
sources.
yeah.
Like, obviously, we're specifically talking about there's this habit that you were saying video essays they'll have some like really reliable piece of information or like obvious information like World War II ended in 1950 or 1945. And it's like I almost don't care if you cite an academic source for that. Everybody knows that. Um, and then they'll mix it with like really speculative or original research information in like sort of the same sentence or same little bit because it flows together really well and it supports their point well, which isn't inherently bad writing. It's just dangerous if you're not citing things and you make it look like obviously World War II ended in 1945 and obviously the Japanese were researching spirit samurai swords like
Exactly.
or whatever,
And it's like
and
if you're making a video where I guess if you were to make some sort of claim like that, and let's say you were the sort of person who made some amount of discovery or like researched and found something like that, it's like wouldn't you want the recognition or like be able to show the proof of those statements? It's like not citing your sources just seems like such a bad. It's like it feels almost. It's obviously not malicious in most cases.
Yeah, I think for the most part, especially the more small time channels, I don't think anyone's sitting there going, "I'm going to trick people into thinking the wrong information about the Civil War." I think they just citing your sources is difficult, it's annoying, and no one gives a fuck. It does not drive clicks, it does not drive views. A really well made, well put together, entertaining, and informative video that has a ton of research in it will do, I'm sure, like the number of more views you're going to get. If you have a video with 1 million views, the number of those views coming from the fact that you did a good job of citing your sources is like 5.
Yeah,
Like
it's
people don't care.
people don't really care. It's like I don't watch like a ton of videos that well, actually no, that's a very much a lie. I watch a lot of like health and fitness based sort of things. So I watch a lot of content that kind of requires some amount of credibility and source citing and everything.
Yeah.
And a lot of the content I make requires a lot of credibility and source citing because I'm talking about topics that I feel like if I'm going to talk about it, I need to make sure, my ducks are in a row sort of thing.
Yeah.
Um, and just from seeing how other people sort of carry themselves when they're making certain videos and the way that they make statements at times, it's just like I really enjoyed the presentation of like a lot of videos, like these insanely talented like editors and stuff. But it's like, man, can you please just do the like this little bit of like tidy work? It's like I get it's like menial in a sense. It's not fun, even though kind of like I've kind of enjoyed like reading sources in a sense. Um, I'm making a video about KOTOR, which I did a whole fucking podcast with Connor about before this one, which is going up after I record this.
Very nice.
And like I'm looking for a lot of resources to kind of really flesh out that video, even though it's about a fictional
Yeah.
space samurai fighting. Like I'm buying I found out that there is like a 2008 basically D&D campaign like setting book for
Well,
Knights of the Old Republic.
I don't know if this was covered on the Decoder podcast, so forgive me if this is old news, but so Knights of the Old Republic, the game,
Mhm.
is based on the D20 system, like for D&D.
Yes,
That's why the math is so weird.
it's like 3 point it's like I don't think
Yeah,
it's
it's based on
3.0.
3.5.
Yeah, 3.5.
Yeah.
It's like it's an adapted version of 3.5 for a video game, which
Yeah.
because Neverwinter Nights was an adapted version of 3.5.
Yes, exactly. Okay, yeah, you know all this stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
It all comes from that sort of ecosystem. And like it's weirdly this like recent innovation that people realized, wait a minute, tabletop games where the numbers are like really like big chunks to make them easy to work with, and like encumbrance works where you build up to a certain point and then instantly can no longer move, are actually really stupid to make based on to make video games based on, and just don't make any sense.
Yeah.
That's like people are just figuring that out.
Yeah. And I've been watching I've been watching a lot of video essays about like basically because um about like Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights and stuff because those are the games that KOTOR's whole engine and everything was based on.
Yeah, yeah. Baldur's
Uh
Gate was really, really big
and
for the
it
genre. I mean,
mhm. And even videos like that, like I don't believe they have like too many like cited resources, but like they
no. Honestly, I think it's a really good example, right? Because you're talking about this game, and I haven't listened to your podcast yet. But you're talking about like, here's what I liked, here's what I didn't like, here's what I thought it meant, here's what I thought was great about the game. It's like art criticism.
Mhm.
But in the same way that if you like go in talking about pre-Raphaelite artists and talking about what you like and dislike about their oil paintings, and you don't understand what the pre-Raphaelite movement is, which is historical information that you can look up people's opinions about, um, what you're going to say is going to be, it's going to be less deep and less rich. In that same sense, if you can go, oh, this studio was actually working on this game and its engine sort of evolved into Coder. That's factual information that, like, if you just make it up and like pull it out of your ass in a video, like how can I, a viewer, think that's true? But it can lend this sort of like depth to your criticism. Like, even though it's like a pure opinion thing, like what you think of the video game, I mean, like being able to look up factual information and meaningfully cite it can, make it a much more informative opinion video.
Yeah, it adds depth and allow like when we talked about like sort of this thing with sources and everything before, it's like sources aren't strictly for a I'm right perspective. They're also for a depth to the work because then that allows people who are interested in the content you're putting forward to look deeper past your video into the depth of
Right.
the
That's
resources that you use.
that's supposed to be, that's another thing I wanted to say about sources. That's supposed to be a really big part of it, right? Where like on some level, like most people do not care about the sources in a video, and like on some level that's okay. It's okay for them to not care about the sources. But what the problem, where it becomes a problem, is if the system doesn't work, where you can't assume that people are being reliable because they're tied to a name like Vox. If you ever do want to look at the video further and ever do want to do your own research, suddenly this informative, well-made video is not a good jumping off platform at
Yeah.
all. Like, it has, first of all, it has nothing, it has no further reading for you to like sort of get into the topic, and you can't even rely on the things it said. You're going in from this perspective that might be based on faulty information, so you have to like relearn it.
Yeah, that's kind of my other like big it's like by having your sources and everything and citing them and like making reference to them and everything, you're building this list of they might not your all of your sources together might not even be in the same fields necessarily, but they all
Yeah.
come together to create your point, to create what you like to aid your piece of media in a sense.
Yeah, and I mean that's what academics is supposed to be, right? Like the goal of, in theory, the goal of making a video about Chinese keyboards, or an essay about Chinese keyboards, video, whatever, um, is information synthesis. You're taking all of this information that exists out there, you're presenting it in a way that creates a coherent argument. You're saying, look how person one said A, person two said B, and person three said C. And then what you're contributing, you're saying, don't you see how these things lead to D? And that is like, that's not bad. It's not a bad thing to come to conclusions. It's just that if you don't have any steps to your conclusion is not like, how can I trust your conclusion? What does it mean? Like, I can make up anything and then say, obviously that proves my point. Like, because I made it up. I made up all the supporting arguments.
Exactly. And it's like when you have a video where you come to certain conclusions or certain you state things in your video in a sense. Uh Johnny's video I'm going to use as a reference just because it's like then people who have spent, large portions of their life dedicated to the study of these things who have come to the same sort of like they've came to the same conclusions, just not in the same format. And then
Yeah.
you take those same conclusions and change the format. That is just copying. Like,
Yeah, I do think that another reason to cite your sources, and another reason people are kind of afraid of citing their sources, is, in academics, there's this like really strong pushback against plagiarism. And I want to say there's like anti-plagiarism, but the reason there's such a strong pushback is because it's so prevalent. Because if you
oh
just
yeah,
take someone else's work and get credit for it, that's awesome. You didn't do any work and you got all this awesome credit. And I think that's easy to do in video essays. People will read this great source and they'll sometimes even repeat it like almost word for word because they're making a video, not like something you have to read. And the crossover between the people watching that and the people who are going to be checking their sources is very low, and they're not going to get called out. And if they get called out, it doesn't really matter. And there's always this like defense of like, oh, it's just edutainment. It's not a serious academic thing, but it's what people are getting information from. You
yeah.
have to care.
It's something very like this. I just remembered this, but it's very like in the same realm. Is I remember when I was first really getting into like wanting to make content, wanting to make videos, wanting to stream, wanting to do whatever. Like I think even like trying to stream tournaments and everything, trying to learn about audio quality, and everything. And I remember at that point I already had like a Blue Yeti microphone, and there was this specific video that kind of it's like I think it's like one of the best videos when it comes to describing like microphone quality, especially when you're using certain um, interfaces and everything, and why the Blue Yeti just kind of fucking sucks,
Sure.
and all this stuff. And it's a very well, it's funny as well. Like the guy who made it, like he has little quips in it and everything. It's a well made video. And then years later, uh, sort of popular like video game like creator basically took that guy's video, almost it felt almost beat for beat, and remade it. And
Yeah.
he got backlash for it, but like not enough in my opinion. Like not like he basically shrugged it off. I don't think he ever admitted to any wrongdoing.
Sure.
Like even though it's like the information he was putting forward was the exact same information, and even some of the like the jokes and stuff were very like beat for beat. It's like if you're going to, and it's like if he had at least referenced the video, you could be like, okay, like he's just putting the information out there again and like kind of modernizing it in a sense or putting it into his style in a sense, even though it's just fucking copying. It's like I
Right. There's an argument that it's transformative content. At least it doesn't seem like he's trying to hide it, you know? Um,
because oh, I'm sorry, you go ahead.
I was just gonna say, but that's exactly why I mean, I don't know about this controversy, so I'm just speculating essentially. But that's essentially why people don't want to cite those sources, right? They don't want to say, "Hey, actually, there's this other video that I'm basically just repeating," because it makes them look bad, you
Yeah.
know. So it ends up in this weird thing where the information might honestly be reliable. It's just that no one wants to admit where they got it because they don't want to just seem like they're just copying other people's work.
It and it just reminds me like there's a lot of like because when you think of like transforming content, there's you have to do I feel like there's very specific ways of transforming content. It's like you have to put some amount of like even more than personality has to there has to be a major change in it inside. It's like because I'm also remembering a creator that I like he makes like commentary stuff, but he also makes like just skits and everything. Uh he had people like basically remaking skits that he did, but just, a few years later, I think giving credit in some way, but they were like even like cinematography, like camera angle stuff, like exactly the same. And it's
Yeah,
like that's not really transformative, and that's just like steal it like even though you're giving like accreditation and everything, but that then brings up the whole subject of like TikTok
sure.
because
Yeah,
that's a
I know.
rampant problem on TikTok because there's a whole lot of like there's certain creators who even with like there's audios that people use. They'll use them to just, repeat the action. It's like obviously that's just people are on the same audio, they're going to do the same thing. There are creators who will rip audios, upload it as their own audio, even like completely jack a skit or full video, give no credit, and then act like they made the video. And it's not even their own, they're not even talking, they're lip syncing.
Yeah, yeah. Um, and I mean, like, on some level, I think like the ability to just like freely put content out there and like freely be transformative, it gives people a lot of creative freedom. But like, yeah, there's a lot of things that are like that. And plagiarism, even though it's easy to say these words are the same, therefore you stole them, and it's very hard to say these camera angles are the same, these jokes are the same, this video, the pacing and the beats are the same. That is still plagiarism. Just because it's hard to prove doesn't mean it doesn't exist, you know?
And it's like even if in the court of academics you won't be charged, it's like public opinion sort of thing.
Well, yeah, but that is true. And it is definitely harder to get that kind of thing to stick. But you can be like, in the music industry, you can be like sued for
Oh yeah, like
copying people's styles.
yeah,
Like
it's
and people win cases. It's not like if you only copy the words and nothing else counts.
I feel like it's a much. I feel like that sort of because of the way the music industry is and how much like profit it's a profit driven industry. It like happens a lot more because like
Oh yeah,
writing, there's money in writing, but there's not there's even though there is passion in music, there's also a lot of money in
there's a lot more
music.
money. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's like obviously there's money in science and like right in academics, but it's like not there's a certain amount of almost credibility built into the institution of it.
Hmm.
Um, but it's just that this is way more of a can of worms than I was expecting it to be. Like off of the first thought I had about it, because
Yeah,
it's
I mean,
just
well, it just sort of goes to show why it's important, right? Because like, yeah, there are serious can of worm issues, right? Like if you um this is something that comes up in academics a lot. I've written a lot of papers. I've helped a lot of students with a lot of papers. And like what just always comes, oops, my thingy's making a lot of noise. Let me just mute that. What it always sort of like comes down to is, um, if you don't want to be accused of plagiarism, the best way to avoid it is to cite all your sources. And if you have a part of your paper that everybody's like, oh, this is just kind of exactly the same thing as this other thing, I think that's plagiarism. If you can be like, well, I cited it, no one is going to take you out and shoot you at high noon. They understand, even if they determine it's plagiarism, they understand that you're not trying to pretend it's your work. You're
it's
citing it, and
yeah
they say your content is not original enough, which is very different than being like, oh, I'm not going to cite this source because then they'll realize I stole it.
yeah
It's just a whole different issue. And so if you're worried about being accused of plagiarism, the best thing you can do is to cite all your sources.
yeah. Unintended plagiarism is much better than intended plagiarism. Um,
Yeah,
it's like I just think there's a certain when it comes to respecting I don't know. I just feel like there's a certain amount of respect you need to give people in academia, in research, in whatever you're doing. Like if you're making I'm gonna go and make this KOTOR video and I'm going to reference every even KOTOR video I skimmed. Like because I don't want like an idea that I might remember after skimming a video. Like I skimmed the video a week ago. I'm writing the script 1 week and it comes to me. I am going to make sure like everything that's a part of the process is mentioned because it was a part of the process in some way. It helped me get from, point A to point B. Um, even though
sure.
that might be a little bit more of an extreme thing, I I'm just a I think that's how you should operate when creating a work where you're also looking at other works and referencing other things. It's just important to give credit where credit's due.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, we kind of talked earlier about how it is tedious and annoying to cite your sources, right? But there's actually an easy way to cite your sources. Whenever you look at them, just write them down.
Yeah,
Um, which I'll be the first to tell you is so much easier said than done, right? Like everybody, all your professors and stuff will just be like, well, how if you didn't have a source for that, how was it in your paper? And you'll be like, oh, fuck off. We talked about it in class, man.
yeah. Like
um,
you're my source, god damn it.
yeah, but like, yeah, you should like sources and credibility is part of research. And I think often the goal of research is I am going to get this video out, I'm going to have 20 minutes, and I'm going to be entertaining, which are great goals. But part of that, especially if you're working for a company like Vox, I don't want to just pick on Johnny. It's just he's the subject.
Yeah, yeah.
There are
It,
plenty of bad academic works out there, but like if you are working for a company that's supposed to have credibility, it just you're a person hired because you theoretically have credentials in this and are theoretically good at doing this. You need to do that. It needs to be part of what you're doing.
it's like, man, you make very good content in a very theatrical sense.
Oh yeah,
Um,
his videos very well put together. I watched them both.
yeah, and like I made sure, and I'm not the type of person who's going to watch 2 videos and then critique a person about something, like, make an assumption on all of his videos. I went through and watched probably a good 10 of his videos. I then made sure to go through and look at his, descriptions and everything to see if he had, a sources, a citing, anything like that. In some of his videos, he does have, like, he'll have, like, newspapers or, like, certain, like, articles, things like that, but those are not a lot of the times, he's not really citing, like, real sources in it. Like a
Yeah, it's definitely fewer and farther between than the information density of the videos would suggest.
exactly, and it's like and he's just especially, like, his Taliban video was very much a emotionally like, he's supposed to be a reporter, he's supposed to be
Yeah.
reporting. Like, he has sort of this title of reporter in a sense, even if that's his title through Vox, not on his YouTube,
Hmm.
and he takes a very personal viewpoint, creates a video on his million subscriber YouTube channel, or almost 2 million subscriber YouTube channel, I think, and just pushes it forward with nothing but this friend of his viewpoint, which I'm not discrediting.
Yeah, I mean, interviewing people like and just getting their point of views. That's what journalism is. It's just that you can't be like, and therefore this is all factually true. It's a primary source. It's not fact.
And then he turns the comments off of his video.
Yeah. Well, I definitely like understand a lot of turning the comments off because especially if you're a big channel, it's
But
just
yeah, I kind of get it, but it's also like it was a just kind of rushed out their video, and it would have just taken some more thought. But I don't know. It's it's just this whole. It comes back to the whole, like, just have more to base, like, have some more information or sources or something to base off what you're talking about. Like, if you're putting a point forward, just I'm correct in a sense. Like, I'm a little more prepared, or
for
like
sure.
just have that work done where there's a little bit more of a, there's a base to stand on for you.
And then maybe you wouldn't need to turn comments off all the time because you would be able to say, actually the data corroborates what I'm trying to say instead
Yeah.
of saying comment off.
Yeah. And it's like, even if you like some amount of it is like personal opinion, which is complete, like, personal opinion can be valid. It's not like that still warrants critique.
Yeah.
It I don't know. It just seems
Yeah,
it
no, totally. I mean, critique is part of it. The other I think major reason people like complain about critique and stuff, besides like you should do it yourself. The argument that I think the comment you originally read, contains an element of this is like, well, if you don't like it, who cares? It just let people enjoy things. Why are you trying to yuck my yum?
yeah.
And I think I can totally understand where people are coming from, and it like seems like a good argument at first, but it's another thing where if you think about it a little bit, it's like you have a problem with famous YouTube channels, potentially making up misleading information. Why is the intellectual health of our society as a whole any of your business? Why do you care?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
come on,
like,
man.
if you want me to, it's kind of, stay in your lane, I'll stay in mine, but my lane is criticism almost. But I'm
Yeah,
also, but
I mean, I know that feeling very well.
yeah, and even saying that though, like, this comment is coming, I feel like this comment comes from someone who very much is just, and I most people are like this, where they are just a person who consumes content. They are just an enjoyer of content more than anything. Um, they don't they're not someone who thinks about making content. And that is not like a negative quality, but I think that is something that when you look at someone who is critiquing someone, you're like, I can't, why are they talking like that or thinking that way? It's like, well, it's because are you making something? Like, have you had to look at yourself internally and critique something? Like, it's I'm not putting anything out there that I'm not also internalizing. Like, I'm not putting any sort of criticism out there that I'm not also putting on myself. I
Sure. Yeah, and you do a good job of like trying to cite even for like what I consider pretty trivial videos.
exactly it,
You cite a lot of information.
and of course some people, like you said, like for you, for some trivial information, I just am like, I can cite it, so I'm going to cite it.
Yeah.
And
Well, like I mean, it's because of the way you're constructing the videos, right? You're like, why wouldn't I cite it? I have it open.
yeah, I have it's in my notes Word document in my project folder for this video. Why would I not just take a screenshot and then put the link in the description? Like, and that's where I get so confused with content like this, where I'm like, where is his, like, you obviously reference something. You could not like, you could not go research something, be like, okay, I now retain that information. I am going to go research something else and then be able to reference this material when I am ready to make the video.
Sure.
Like, it
Yeah.
is, you like, you have to go through and slog through information, take notes, like maybe highlight things, whatever it is, like, and then once you have enough of an idea, it's like, okay, I can start to like storyboard or formulate what I want to do with this video or this article or this whatever it is. And I'm obviously going to have to go back to these articles and find this information either again or specific details to then reference. Like, he like, if he had specific quotes or anything, it's like from like certain people, it's like, where did you get those quotes from? Like, what? Because those quotes are more than likely from a piece of work that has a more broad like look at maybe something. It's like, I just, where's the paper trail that I cannot fathom not exist? Like, it has to exist. Like, it
I mean that's the thing though. It does exist. Like they're getting this information from somewhere. They're just either being too lazy to cite it, or they're trying to be deliberately deceptive. Like they're just not showing it to us.
yeah, it's like we can split hairs all we want trying to give like a benefit of the doubt. Like, that's
Oh
kind
yeah, and again, I don't think people do this for the most part because they're like wicked and trying to trick you. I just think it's hard, and I think that the industry, which is a competitive one, YouTube video essays, does not reward you for taking the source citing really seriously.
yeah. And for someone who obviously has more duties than their YouTube channel, like Johnny does, it's like,
Yeah, for sure.
I could see, but he's also, I then like lose that sort of idea when I'm like, he's working with a team. Like, he has a team. I know
Right,
he
he
has some
has more
kind of team.
resources
Yeah, he
as
has
well
more.
as
It's like he has less time, maybe, but he has more resources in another sense. So
yeah.
I like, and it just, it kind of grinds my gears in a sense because I'm like, I when people like this coming back to this comment talking about making this stuff, I'm like, hey, so do you want me to go talk to my team of like industry professionals at Vox who can help me, like, formulate this video or give me critique on this video or help me get in contact with people who maybe know about this subject matter? No, I'm actually just sitting at my desk with all equipment I personally bought with my income, doing my own research, trying to reach out maybe to people that I have found on the internet who might know about the subject. Like, I don't like, I might ask someone for help, like on a video or something. But in general, it like, comparing what a small YouTuber does to someone who works for a company like Vox, even on their technically personal YouTube channel, is completely different. A completely different environment, it's a completely different process, and it it just leads me back to the, like, if I can do it, why can't he? Like, if if you know if someone in academics can do it, and well, that's a bit that's their whole job in it. But
Yeah, I mean, but academics is a, it's a tough job.
yeah, it is a tough job. And I just feel like when you create stuff like this, which is kind of an offshoot of academics almost, I feel like you have to respect the roots that come from academics.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I mean, that that's one of the things I'm trying to say about this in general. Whether or not you want to be in academics, if you're trying to make like videos about scholarly topics that people are watching and using as information to learn about the subject, to decide if they like the subject, to repeat fun facts at parties, you are in academics. That you don't there isn't like a lot there isn't like a you don't decide, oh, I am not an academic person, so I don't have to care about any of this stuff. You know, there's the whole reason we care about taking academics seriously and making sure they're good with their sources and stuff is not for them. It's not so that they can have a fun little academic club. It's because the idea is that that's how information is curated and how we are able to reliably learn things about the world from the institutions that are supposed to teach us about the world. And if you are putting yourself in those shoes, you're also gaining that responsibility, whether you want to or not.
And I feel like people would then kind of chime back depending on like you said with the whole you're putting yourself in the shoes. It's like the argument I could see people having is like, well, they aren't, they're not trying to create something for people to reference, but they are creating a piece of media that is going to, depending, like, because it's a public forum, could sway public opinion and then lead to it could lead to a change in public opinion. And if that is based off of information that is not factual, because I mean, we're living in an age of a lot of misinformation and a lot of even just uh, diluted information in a sense. It's I think that brings a lot of the importance of putting out good information and reliable information in
Yeah,
today's day.
absolutely.
Um, and that it's like I said in the video specifically, like if you've taken a single writing class, even in high school, like you know what a good source is, like even can look at a piece of information and sort of get an idea. It's like, okay, can I reliably trust this to base any sort of point or discussion on?
Yeah, totally. And I mean, uh, yeah, like you said, people know what a reliable source is, and they know what a reliable source is just from like even without like a specific writing class. Like very often, if you're making these kind of videos, this is the kind of content you're familiar with and you consume as
Yeah.
well. And like, yeah, you know when something's reliable and when you don't. You know, if someone's like, "Oh, I'm citing Wikipedia," more power to you. That's fine. I don't care. I'm not your dad. That's fine source as far as I'm concerned. Because, you know, it is scholarly because on Wikipedia takes the notion of sources very seriously. And sometimes it has you know, information that's not accurate, but for the most part as an institution, it takes the idea of sources much more seriously than most video writers.
Yeah.
Um and you know, if you're bringing that same energy to your video, you can create something really awesome that other people can rely on.
I that just in my last video, I for finding like the contestants in that game show, like their specific like names and everything, and I just went into the Wikipedia page for like
Yeah.
their basic bio thing. So I was like, I'm gonna use this. Like this will be easier than anything else. And like I
Yeah,
admitted in
sure.
the video, I'm like, I got it from Wikipedia. It's like, but I just think I just give some like give give the people who are watching like some amount of like idea of where you're get like if you're writing if it's not a full on opinion video or it's not something like Star Wars or whatever, like give them some reason to trust what you're saying.
Yeah, absolutely. And the very often the reason for that is either your video looked nice, which is not a good reason. It's like a requirement to get your what you want to say out there, and I don't think it's bad to have well edited videos. But this content was well produced, it does not make that content true. And then the other reason is you have established institutional credibility. Like, say, if you're a journalist for Vox, people have this incentive to believe what you're saying. And if you're not holding up your end of that bargain, that erodes that sense of credibility. And then people are like, well, why don't I just watch 9/11 worm conspiracy YouTube instead? They're just as credible, which is like true.
Yeah, I mean, there's probably crazy conspiracy videos that have more cited sources than
right. Well, because they need to, battle for it so much more. I don't think they're, better researched in that. I think very often there's something going wrong in the research. But like, I totally understand why people, if people are eroding faith in institutions that are supposed to keep people informed, I don't think like people are idiots for turning to other things. I think very often they come to dumb conclusions, but like, I get where they're coming from,
I agree with that. But I think we're just about towards like the hour point.
Yeah, we talked for a bit, for sure. I'm trying to think of any other key information that I wanted to say on the topic. Yeah, just in terms of like my own tutoring and stuff, I can just definitely confirm that a lot of people, by the way, this is the cited source here is my own personal experience. It's like an interview. That's journalism. It's fine. A lot of people are just like, citing sources is like lame and not that important. Like it really does happen, and I totally get why, because it like sucks. And no one would do it if they didn't literally fail you if you didn't.
I mean, I've taken a number. For college specifically, like I had to take. What was fun was I took 2 writing classes in high school. Didn't get the credits for them, even though they were college courses. Went into college, took like 2 writing classes, and then had to take a specifically computer science writing class, or like science writing or something.
Sure.
Which I just took. Which like I writing is something I've always personally done well in. So it's like,
Sure.
and I've always like I don't like citing sources when I write papers. I know I have to. When I write a video though, it's because I'm making something I want to make, so I'm very much about citing my sources. I feel like there's definitely this kind of push and if you're not wanting to cite your sources in a video, it kind of gives me this questioning of like, why not? Why like you're making something that you, I would hope, enjoy making. Like, why are you not willing to show me like the research you did, the effort you put in? Like, if you have a long list of resources and like information that I can go through and look at to back up your point, that is amazing to me. And I'm one of 5 then that enjoy that. But
Yeah.
it's I even if it only pleases 5 people, I would like to I'd rather please 5 people with that than I'd like to if annoy 5 people, no, if I annoy 100 people but please 5 by doing that, I'm fine with it in a sense.
Yeah, and I do think that, on that topic, like, I do think like part of it is people just want to be entertained and just want to see a video they enjoy for the most part and don't care that much about sources. But part of it is also like we have institutions that are actively rewarding lack of credibility and plagiarism, right? Like YouTube could, in its like YouTube algorithm of what to try to push towards you, it could try to say, well, we have some sort of, spotty automated system of determining how well people are doing these things that would be expected of academics. They could try to actually put effort into figuring out if people are having good citations, if people are having good research practices, and they could try to say, we're pushing this video towards you because we've determined you're interested in pre-colonial American history, and these videos are considered credible about it. They could make that adjustment, but they don't. They say, we're pushing this video towards you because it has a great thumbnail and we think you're going to click on it and watch it.
Oh yeah.
And I understand why they do that, but like there are it's not just Johnny, it's not just the viewers. There are steps companies could take, there are steps social institutions could take to try to say, we want to seriously value this. But they don't. What they do is, there's a bunch of conspiracy videos out there that people start complaining about them, like, why is YouTube allowing this? And then they have press releases after the fact where they try to backpedal.
Yeah. And because those videos got clicks and because people are watching them because like, this shit is just crazy, it's like they're gonna just keep pushing it and then
oh yeah, they'll never ban that stuff because there's a lot of people who spend a lot of time on YouTube who would not and did not before that kind of content was what they were consuming. And I get it. I think that's another argument people make about criticism. They'll be like, well, this company made a lot of money, so aren't you kind of wrong for criticizing them? And I'm like, but I don't think this company making money is a good thing.
Yeah.
I don't want them to.
It's like, hey, it turns out capitalism isn't always the pinnacle.
Right, just whatever makes money is good. Yeah, and I mean, I think a lot of those kind of arguments people don't really... I don't think anyone really believes them when they say it. Even when someone's like, oh, why are you criticizing this? You should just make a better thing. I don't think they really think that. I think they're just kind of saying it because they've heard it before, is my attitude.
It's just the regurgitated, counterpoint to criticism.
Yeah, what they mean is, I actually don't like your criticism because I emotionally enjoyed this thing that you are now attacking, and I am going to attack you to make that sting less.
I'm going to say you should do this, even though if this guy looked at any of my videos, we can talk about quality till we're blue in the face. But if he looked at any of my videos and that were about specific topics, he would see my laundry lists of citation and sources.
Yeah, you literally will often at the end of a video, you'll have like the boring, here's a bunch of sources section for everyone to get,
I just they're it's in the description,
in the comments. Great.
There's somewhere it will be found easily. Like, he obviously just wanted to shit on me, and he didn't even do enough research to do a proper shit talk. Like, you're gonna say some shit proper, like fucking that's what it's like. I am completely okay with criticism. I'm completely okay with you just shitting on me. Like, if you can make a good shit talk or talk good shit, I'll take it. But do it correct. Don't come at me with weak shit.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm not even sure I would worry about all that in terms of really caring that much about what some individual random person has to say. I mean, this is literally why people like Johnny turn off the comments in their videos.
Yeah.
Right? Part of it I think is true of if no one can criticize me, no one can expose that I might have questionable standards. But also just the sheer number of people who are going to have low quality attacks.
Yeah, I guess that's
so
a good
high.
Point. It's I mean, this annoyed me, and I guess if I got a million of these, it would be annoying. But in the long term, I've just laughed at this because of how little it has to stand on, and that's sort of, I don't know. I'm hoping at some point when I have started to create more quality content that maybe gets to more people and I get more interaction, that I can have more open discussion with sort of even though that's going to be, it's only going to be to an extent because there's going to be a lot of just shit. It's if there's valid criticism, I would like to, interact with it, not just.
Yeah. I mean, so something Mark Rosewater always says about criticism. Mark Rosewater, for the podcast listeners, Mark Rosewater is the lead designer of Magic the Gathering. And he's also kind of this really public facing spokesperson. He directly interacts with a lot of fans. And one thing he always says is, especially online with comments and stuff, it's sort of easy for people to be jerks because they're just trying to get their point across. And it's your job to try to figure out what they are trying to say to you and if it's a legitimate grievance, because the fact that they're a jerk, they could still have good criticism, and it does not help them to be a jerk, it makes it harder for you to find the good criticism. But they could still, it's your job to be able to figure out what they are actually saying, you know. So while I think we can view this comment as negative in a lot of ways and sort of debunk the sort of just like parroted arguments of like, you should do a better job, obviously that's stupid. You should just ignore any content you don't like, obviously that's, you know, if everybody did that all the time, that would have some negative repercussions. There's a place to criticize people's bad behavior. But beyond that, we can sort of, you know, this person is saying something that you can hopefully get something of value from, you know. I don't know what it is,
Yeah,
but
well,
you know, feedback is part of the process.
I think it's like I think the biggest takeaway from the comment in a sense is there are viewers on YouTube who don't like to see uh very open and direct criticism slash they don't like content that is mainly derived from criticism.
Yeah,
Uh and I mean it also doesn't help that this person's obviously a fan of Johnny Harris. So
sure,
and I this person like Johnny Harris had a video come out and my video jumped like 60 views. Like
sure,
it's very like I could tell this is gonna happen probably every few weeks because
sure.
I think that my video is solidly gotten tied into his like with the algorithm.
That's how
And
it starts.
yeah. And so I'm like, I'm probably gonna get this every so often from people who watch Johnny Harris. I might get some people who like that's a valid criticism. Like I and then I'm gonna get some people who are just like, I like Johnny's videos, and I think you're just being mean, and I think your content has no place. And it's like, well, I I disagree. But and it's like I I I've made my statement here in a sense to this sort of viewpoint. If I were to get another comment like it, I would not respond to it.
Sure. I mean, yeah, there's only so many hours in the day, right? You can't respond to every single comment.
Yeah, and it's like if someone comes back with the same sort of regurgitated thing, and it's like there's a comment below it of the same regurgitated thing, I feel like I'll read it and then be like, oh, they're just saying they're having the same sort of reaction as this other comment I saw. It's like I can not ignore it. It's like it's just not the type of viewer I am looking for in the sense of my
Sure.
videos.
All right. Well, I mean, there's always the dark side path, right, Hunter? Where
Yeah,
it's like, oh, I made this controversial video and that did well. It's getting engagement.
oh
Maybe I
yeah.
should make more of those. You
Oh my
know?
that's a topic I've wanted to talk about when it comes to specifically fitness content and fitness content on like TikTok because holy crap, there's so much like this bad fitness content on TikTok, but it
Oh yeah.
gets clicks because it is obviously wrong or obviously misleading.
Right.
Like
Right.
people,
Here's why you need to throw all your eggs away.
yeah, like oh yeah, the people who go through like a Walmart and like this is poison. Like
Yeah.
it's just
Um.
very even though those people probably, eat eggs from Walmart and shit like that.
Right. I mean, fitness is such a great topic for it too because like everybody is so different. Like obviously there's a lot of advice that applies to everyone. I'm not trying to say
Yeah.
ignore all advice ever. In fact, I'm trying to say the opposite. But everybody's so different and everybody cares so much about fitness and everybody's ability to make a plan and their ability to stick to that plan are so different that there's just so much room to create content to be like this is what works and this is what doesn't because no one can say you're wrong,
Yeah.
right?
There's
Maybe
so
it works
much
for some people.
there's so much room for error due to people's perception of error in a sense
Sure.
because and it's you'll have someone who thinks that they have done something to like specification and in reality they actually have not met the specification for the result that they wanted and that somebody will take that and then they'll say and they'll find some other people who have done the exact same thing. They'll use that as sort of a they'll try to use that as a source. They're like, me and these other people, we did all the compound lifts, and we never got like our aesthetics never improved. But once we started doing, very I can't remember right now, but we did specific motions, or like we switched up to more direct like muscle work,
Sure,
like
like curls and stuff
yeah,
as
yeah,
opposed to deadlift.
yeah.
Yeah.
Instead of doing compounds, they did more direct muscle work. Like we started seeing results. It's like maybe you just weren't loading things. Like there's so much nuance to what leads to success in fitness, and that
Oh yeah.
it
And I mean,
just
form's really important for compounds. I'm a different deadlifter than last time you saw me.
yeah, form is a lot. I mean, and there's the whole like fitness has a terrible problem with charlatans and like
hmm
where it's just I'm not going to talk about nuance with you. I'm simply going to state these things. I have one study to back me. Buy my book. Uh,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
like
I
I
mean, it's because everybody cares about it and no one knows anything about it.
yeah, it's or it's like you. Oh God, there's a specific charlatan called Squat University on he's on like Instagram, YouTube, and everything, and like he works with lot of high profile athletes and everything, and
Oh, interesting.
he's a doctor and everything. Like he has put out good information, but he has specific stances that are very problematic in that they drive a sort of fear to progress or a fear to even start for some people, in my opinion. And it's something it's not a uncommon talking point in fitness, I think, and a lot of the fitness creators I watch have talked about it. But it is I think it's I'm planning on making a video at some point, kind of coming from more of a novice perspective, novice for 3 to 4 years experience, rather than some of these people who are way more experienced than I am.
Yeah, yeah.
Like, because I like this person's content's actively made me like scared of doing like heavy like squats and stuff before. Like it's it is it's like even if it's unintended fear mongering, it's fear mongering. Like it's
Sure. Yeah. But
and
I mean, people have legitimate concerns about doing it wrong, right? Like, because if you're, especially with like a heavy compound lift where it's like, and I'm not saying people shouldn't compound lift. I actually think the opposite. But like, if you don't know what you're doing and you fuck up and, you know, like mess up your spine, that's with you for life.
yeah.
So I understand why people will look at content that says never do this will fuck you up, and be like, oh my god, I shouldn't do this, because they don't really know what they're doing. They're not, you've been doing it for 3 years and you're good at it and you're a novice in a sense.
Yeah. It's just like it it's just it keep like you said, when it's like it's with you for life, but it's like as long as you take certain precautions that aren't even like super like crazy, it's like you're gonna be fine. It's but when you make content that's pushing this narrative and cherry picking research, it's like it's almost a discussion moving away from not citing sources to cherry picking sources, stuff like that. It's but we're like real far into this, so we'll kind of wrap this up because we're going to a whole nother
Oh yeah,
conversation.
yeah. We're just kind of talking at this point.
Yeah, but uh, where can people find you on social media if you want to be found on social?
Oh yeah, sure. So the best place to find me on social media is my Twitter at LUQWIL1. There's a one in there, unfortunately, and I've just never thought of a better Twitter handle. But that's the best place to follow me on social media. I'll occasionally make dumb little jokes. I'll occasionally announce that I'm streaming at the same time as Hunter. Um,
It happens.
yeah, I also have an Instagram. It should just be LUQWIL, but I never post on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, if you want to follow me on social media, Twitter's the way to go. If you don't want to follow me on social media, that's fine. Steal some of my jokes, tell them at a party. I've heard great reviews of that.
Yeah, steal some of Luke's jokes that he steals from other people. No.
I do that
Yeah,
sometimes. Transformative content,
yeah,
if you
it's
will. I mean, joke stealing, we kind of talked about plagiarism, but we don't have to go into this now. Joke stealing is a really big topic in comedy and stuff. And
yeah.
it's
Oh yeah.
like, if you do like a decent show that like actually makes people like giggle even slightly at like a local comedy place, people will steal your jokes. Trust me.
Oh, I
Um,
do not even doubt it.
and it sucks because what are you supposed to do? Like, people don't even record it, because who cares?
Yeah,
Um,
that is like a whole other bag, and it's some like I've watched commentary videos on that before.
yeah, and I mean, honestly, it could be if you ever like were super into it, anyone listening, or whoever, it could be an interesting topic for like a video essay. Just make sure, there's a lot of serious information and interviews out there, so make sure you read them and cite them.
yeah, and make sure they have your information and ducks in a row and all that stuff. But
Yeah,
I'll have all my social media fucking on the screen or in the
yeah.
description of the podcast. So, and
If they were listening to this, they probably know where to find you.
I would hope so. So, but yeah, it was good talking with you.
Yeah, it's always a good time. Thanks for interviewing me.
Of course.